The sun was dipping low, painting the park in golden amber, when I realized I hadn't seen her in years. My stepdaughter, Lily, had grown into this impossibly confident, slightly mysterious woman. She waved from across the grassy knoll, a picnic blanket slung over her arm, and for a moment, I just froze. There was something in her smile, like she was hiding something, but daring me to notice. I set down my coffee, pretending not to stare. At 45, I like to think I had a sense of timing, of reading people, but Lily had always been a puzzle. She was 24 now, vibrant in a way that made me feel off balance. Not uncomfortable, not exactly, but aware. A little too aware. My hands tightened around the coffee cup, the heat seeping through my fingers, and I realized I hadn't even thought about what to say. We started with small talk, the usual polite questions: school, work, friends. I noticed the way she avoided my eyes when I mentioned my husband, her father, and the subtle shift in her posture when she laughed too quickly. The air smelled faintly of fresh grass and something sweet, maybe the pastries she'd brought. The park was quiet, apart from a few children laughing by the pond, a breeze rustling through the trees, but it felt like the world had contracted around our little blanket, like we were alone in this bubble of sunlight and unspoken words. I have to tell you something, Lily said suddenly, breaking the pause. Her voice was low, hesitant, and my stomach sank. That tone, the one that comes before everything changes. I tried to smile, tried to keep it casual. Sure, what is it? But already I was bracing myself, feeling the subtle tug of tension in her jaw, the way her fingers fiddled with the edge of the blanket. She took a deep breath. It's kind of hard to say, and I don't even know if you'll believe me. Her eyes flicked up, caught mine, and then looked away. There was that same old intensity, the intensity that used to make me want to protect her and also, oddly, hold back. I nodded, encouraging, trying to mask the weird mix of curiosity and unease twisting inside me. Okay, she started, and then stopped, biting her lip, staring at the grass. She looked like a secret was living in her chest, growing heavier by the second, ready to spill. Just promise me you won't freak out, she finally whispered, and my heart skipped. I promise, I said. But even as the words left my mouth, I felt a tightening in my chest, because I had no idea what I was promising to handle. And then, she looked up at me, eyes wide, and said something that made the blood drain from my face. Something I couldn't have predicted, something that would change everything I thought I knew about her, about us, and about that quiet park where the sun was still setting, oblivious to the storm she had just unleashed. The words lingered in the air, heavier than the evening sunlight pressing down on us. I stared at Lily, trying to read her face, searching for a clue in the way her fingers twisted the edge of the blanket. She was still the same person I'd known, but older now, smarter, sharper, a little untamed. She had grown in ways I hadn't anticipated, and yet there was something fragile beneath that confidence, something I wanted to protect but didn't know how. I remembered the first time I met her. She had been just 16, sitting at the edge of the couch with her sketchbook, eyes wide and suspicious. I had tried then to bridge the gap between stepmother and teenager, but it had been awkward, filled with too many silences and half-hearted jokes. Over the years, we had learned to coexist, to laugh together at strange little things, to argue over movies or coffee preferences, but there had always been a layer we never quite crossed. Now, sitting on this worn picnic blanket, surrounded by the gentle hum of the park and the faint scent of grass and pastries, that barrier felt thinner than ever. I noticed the way her hair caught the last light of the sun, the subtle quiver in her hand as she reached for a slice of apple pie. Every little movement felt significant, like the tiniest detail could tip the balance of something I wasn't even sure I fully understood yet. I've always wondered, she started, her voice soft, why you and Dad, never really. I don't know, talked about me more when I was younger. She trailed off, and I realized she wasn't asking for an explanation. She was testing me. Testing whether I would meet her in the space between what was said and what was left unsaid. I nodded slowly, unsure of what to say. I wanted to tell her everything, the guilt I carried for not stepping in sooner, the regret for the moments I'd missed, but the words lodged somewhere in my throat. Instead, I reached for her hand, just lightly, and she didn't pull away. That small touch felt like a bridge we'd been walking toward for years without even knowing it. Around us, the park had grown quieter. A couple walked their dog past the pond, laughing, and the sound made me aware of how still we had been. It was strange, this mix of ordinary surroundings and the extraordinary weight of what she was about to reveal. The picnic, meant to be simple and casual, had become charged, every detail sharper. The crinkle of the blanket, the sweet tang of the pastries, the way the wind teased strands of her hair across her face. She hesitated again, glancing at the shadows forming under the trees, then back at me. "I don't even know if you'll understand," she whispered, almost to herself. I leaned slightly closer, sensing the tension in her voice, the secret hovering like a storm cloud between us. "Try me," I said, my voice calm, but my chest tight. She nodded, a small, almost imperceptible movement, and the silence stretched. The park felt impossibly wide, yet impossibly close, containing all the questions, the unspoken history, and the secret she was about to share. And then, she finally spoke a word that made my stomach twist, not enough to reveal the secret yet, but enough to make me wish I could stop time, just to prepare for whatever was coming next. Her words hovered between us, unfinished, like a sentence waiting for punctuation that could never come. I leaned back slightly, trying to give her space, but every instinct in me wanted to close it, to reach across that small blanket and steady the tremor I saw in her hands. The park felt too bright, too quiet, every rustle of leaves echoing like it was listening. I've been keeping something from you," Lily said finally, her voice low, uneven. She tucked a loose strand of hair behind her ear, avoiding my eyes. I noticed the little hitch in her breath, the way her shoulders stiffened. She wasn't just nervous, she was scared. And suddenly I realized that whatever she was about to tell me wasn't small. I nodded slowly. "Okay," I said, trying to keep it neutral, even as my heart raced. "You don't have to explain it all at once." She shook her head, a faint, frustrated laugh escaping. "No, it's not that simple. It's about your husband." My stomach dropped. Her father. I felt a cold knot forming in my chest. I wanted to ask, but I also knew that asking might push her away, make her retreat into that familiar guardedness I had spent years trying to soften. I found out something," she said finally, eyes darting to the pastries on the blanket, as if counting them would give her courage. "Something about him, about us. And I didn't know how to say it. I didn't want to hurt anyone." She trailed off again, her voice breaking slightly, leaving me hanging in that heavy silence. I didn't move. I couldn't. The past, the years of half-words and overlooked moments, seemed to press down on me. I wanted to reach for her hand, but fear rooted me in place. I could feel her watching me, waiting for a reaction, and the tension made my own skin itch. We sat there for a long moment, the world moving around us but irrelevant. A jogger passed, headphones blaring music, oblivious to the storm contained in our little patch of grass. I could see the faint quiver in her fingers, the hesitation in every small gesture, the way she brushed crumbs off her jeans, over and over, like it would somehow erase the secret. "I didn't mean for it to be like this," she whispered finally. "I thought I could manage it. I didn't know it would feel so heavy." Her words hit me differently than I expected. Not just the secret itself, but the weight she had carried alone. And beneath that, something else. A quiet, unspoken plea that she wanted me to understand, to see her, fully and without judgment. I swallowed, the words catching in my throat. I wanted to tell her it was okay, that would figure it out, but even that felt fragile, like saying it aloud could shatter the delicate trust between us. I realized just how much she had grown, how different this Lily was from the one who had sat on my couch years ago, suspicious and distant. And then, just as I opened my mouth to respond, her phone buzzed. She glanced at it, then looked back at me, a shadow crossing her face. I noticed her sudden stiff posture, the tension in her jaw. Whatever awaited on that screen was another layer of the storm, and I couldn't help but wonder if this was about to become more than either of us could handle. Her phone lay face down on the blanket, and I could see the tension in her shoulders even before she touched it. She didn't pick it up immediately, just stared at it like it had become some kind of ticking clock, counting down to the moment everything would change. I wanted to say something, to fill the silence, but the words seemed useless against the weight pressing between us. "Do you want to talk about it?" I asked finally, my voice softer than I intended. I could feel my pulse in my throat, the unease twisting like a coil. She shook her head, a small, quick motion. "Not yet." Her eyes flicked to the horizon, where the sun had dipped lower, casting long shadows across the park. There was a sharpness in her gaze, almost defiant, but underneath it, something fragile. vulnerable. It made my chest tighten in a way I hadn't expected. We sat in silence for a while, the kind that feels loud, every rustle of leaves and distant laughter amplified. I noticed the slight tremor in her fingers as she absently traced the edge of the blanket. I realized she was holding herself back, holding the secret in like a fragile, dangerous flame. And I wanted to reach for it, to take some of that weight, but I didn't know if I should. "You've changed," I said suddenly, barely above a whisper. The words came out before I could stop them. Not just in the obvious ways. You carry things differently now. I can see it. Her gaze flicked to me, startled for a moment, and then she gave a small, tight smile. Maybe. Or maybe I'm just tired of pretending everything's normal. She didn't elaborate, but the subtext was sharp, slicing the quiet between us. I swallowed hard. The picnic, which had started with casual laughter and shared pastries, now felt like the edge of something bigger, something neither of us could ignore. The tension wasn't just about her secret anymore. It was about years of miscommunication, old regrets, unspoken feelings that had accumulated between us. I could feel the stakes rising with each pause, each glance, each carefully measured word. "I wish you'd trust me," I said finally, and even I was surprised by the desperation in my voice. "You don't have to carry it alone." She hesitated, and then her eyes filled with something raw, almost too heavy to hold. "I know," she whispered, "but it's complicated, and maybe some things are better left unsaid." I wanted to argue, to insist, but the uncertainty in her tone stopped me. Instead, I simply reached out, my hand hovering near hers, unsure whether to touch, unsure whether it would help or make everything worse. She looked at my hand, then away, biting her lip. That small, tense gesture said more than words ever could. She wanted connection, but she was terrified of what it might cost her. A sudden gust of wind rustled the blanket, scattering crumbs across the grass. She froze, and I noticed the way her chest tightened, the subtle catch in her breath. It was like the world itself had paused, holding its breath along with us. And in that stillness, I realized, whatever she was about to reveal, it was about to change everything, if we survived the storm between us. Just as I was about to lower my hand, Lily's phone buzzed again, insistently this time. She glanced at it and froze, her thumb hovering over the screen like it might burn her. I wanted to ask, to intervene, but something in her expression, sharp, urgent, guarded, stopped me. I should probably see this," she muttered, almost to herself. Her voice was tight, brittle. She swiped the screen open, and the sudden look of shock in her eyes made my stomach drop. "It's him," she whispered, and my heart skipped. Not her father, but someone else, someone who belonged to her past, someone tangled up in whatever secret she had been holding. Her fingers trembled as she scrolled, and I noticed her bite her lip, hard, like she was trying to contain a storm. "Lily," I said softly, leaning slightly forward. My instinct screamed at me to reach out, to steady her, to somehow protect her from whatever was coming. But she shook her head, almost violently, as if that action alone could undo what she'd just seen. I can't ignore this," she said, voice breaking now. Her gaze flicked to me, pleading, and something in the way she looked, vulnerable, exposed, cut deeper than I expected. "It changes everything." I thought I could manage it, but I was wrong. The tension between us tightened like a wire. I could feel the years of half-truths, missed opportunities, and quiet regrets pressing down. The park felt smaller, heavier. The children's laughter from across the pond faded into background noise, irrelevant. "I don't understand," I said cautiously, trying to keep my voice calm. "What exactly?" She shook her head again, a sharp, frustrated movement. "It's not just one thing. It's everything stacked together, all these little moments I couldn't explain, and now I see why I've been so off." Her hands trembled as she clutched her phone, and I realized that whatever this was, it wasn't just a secret, it was a revelation. I took a slow breath, trying to steady myself. "You can tell me," I said, though my chest ached with anticipation. "We'll figure it out. Together." Her eyes darted away, down to the blanket, then back to me. There was a mix of longing and fear there, something I had seen before but never this raw. "I'm scared," she admitted, almost whispering. "I don't know if it's too late, or if it's even supposed to be fixed." The wind picked up, tossing crumbs across the blanket. She pulled her knees closer, wrapping her arms around them, and I noticed the subtle tremor in her shoulders. She wanted to say more, needed to, but something held her back, shame, hesitation, or maybe just the enormity of what she carried. And then she looked up, meeting my eyes with a sudden, urgent intensity. "You have to promise me," she said, voice sharp, almost desperate, "that whatever happens, you won't walk away." I nodded, though uncertainty twisted inside me. "I promise," I said. But even as the words left my mouth, I realized that the promise felt fragile. The moment stretched, weighted, and heavy, and I knew in my gut that whatever came next would change everything between us, forever. The air around us felt heavier, charged, as if the park itself was holding its breath. Lily's eyes locked onto mine, wide and unguarded, and for the first time, the wall she had built between us seemed to crumble. I could see the truth in her gaze, the fear, the regret, the longing, and it hit me harder than I expected. "I can't keep pretending anymore," she whispered, her voice trembling. She shifted closer, hands clasped tightly in her lap, knuckles white. "Everything I've been hiding, it's not just about him. It's about me. About us. And I." Her voice faltered, breaking into silence. I reached out, letting my hand hover near hers, unsure if touching her would comfort or frighten her. She glanced at it, then slowly let her fingers brush mine, tentative, searching. That small contact felt like crossing a line we'd both been circling for years, a line I hadn't realized I longed to cross until this exact moment. "Lily," I said softly, my voice barely more than a whisper, "you don't have to carry this alone. Not anymore." Her lips pressed together, biting down on words she couldn't find. A tear slipped, unnoticed at first, tracing a path down her cheek. I wanted to reach up, brush it away, but paused. She needed to take the step herself. Finally, she let out a shaky breath. I've been afraid of losing you," she admitted, voice breaking. "Of saying something wrong, of being misunderstood. But keeping it all in, it's worse. I can't do it anymore." The truth spilled out then, in halting fragments, confessions about moments I hadn't understood, missteps that had haunted her, feelings tangled up in years of silence. And as she spoke, something shifted inside me. Every regret, every missed opportunity, every awkward pause between us suddenly made sense. The bond we had tried to ignore was stronger than either of us had admitted. I squeezed her hand gently. "I see you, Lily," I said. "I see everything. And I'm not going anywhere." Her shoulders relaxed slightly, the tremor in her hands softening. A small, almost relieved laugh escaped her, the tension in her chest easing just enough to allow a fragile peace to settle. For a brief, golden moment, it felt like the storm had passed. But then her phone buzzed again. She glanced at the screen, eyes widening, and her breath hitched. "It's him," she whispered, a mix of fear and disbelief in her tone. I leaned closer, heart racing, and realized that whatever clarity we had just reached was only temporary. The secret, the complications, the unanswered questions, they weren't over yet. And even as relief washed over me, a pulse of uncertainty surged, reminding me that our story was far from simple, far from over. We sat there, side by side, hands still touching, hearts still racing, the park fading around us. The sunset painted long shadows across the grass, and in that fragile light, I understood that we had crossed a threshold. But beyond it, the next moment could still change everything. The park had grown quiet as the sun finally dipped below the horizon, leaving long shadows stretching across the blanket. Lily sat beside me, still holding her phone but no longer trembling. The storm of revelations and confessions had passed, leaving a fragile calm in its place. We didn't speak immediately. Words felt unnecessary. Instead, we let the silence carry the weight of what had just happened, the shared understanding, the trust rebuilt, the unspoken promise that neither of us would walk away. I noticed the way her shoulders had relaxed, the small exhale that escaped her lips, and I realized how much courage it had taken for her to reveal everything. "I'm glad we talked," I finally said, voice soft, almost tentative. She looked at me, a faint smile tugging at her lips. "Me too," she admitted. "Even if it wasn't easy, even if it felt impossible." The tension that had clung to us for years seemed to lift slightly, replaced by a quiet connection that felt real, human, and surprisingly steady. I reached out, brushing a loose strand of hair from her face, and she didn't pull away. That simple gesture said more than any words could. We had crossed a boundary, faced the storm, and come through together. I thought about the past, the awkward silences, the missed opportunities, the years we had tiptoed around each other. And I realized that those moments had led us here, to this fragile, honest place. The secret she had revealed, the tension it had brought, had forced us to see each other clearly for the first time in a long while. Her phone buzzed one last time, but this time, neither of us moved to check it immediately. Instead, we let the moment linger, savoring the quiet after the storm. I could feel her hand shift slightly in mine, a small, tentative gesture, and I squeezed it gently, silently acknowledging that we were okay, for now. "Do you ever think about how things could have been different?" she asked suddenly, eyes searching mine. "Sometimes," I said. "But then I think about how we are here now. And maybe that's what matters." She nodded slowly, her gaze drifting to the horizon where the last light lingered. "Yeah. Here. Now." We packed up the picnic in silence, the air between us lighter but still carrying the depth of what had been shared. As we walked toward the park exit, side by side, it felt like the beginning of something new, a connection grounded in honesty, tempered by the past, and strong enough to face whatever came next. Even as the world returned, the laughter of distant children, the rustle of leaves in the evening breeze, I carried with me a sense of quiet gratitude. For the courage it had taken to speak, for the trust it had taken to listen, and for the understanding that some secrets, once shared, could strengthen rather than break us. As we stepped into the fading light, I realized that the hardest moments often lead to the clearest truths. And in that clarity, we found something rare and human, a bond that, despite everything, might just survive the storms yet to come.